Mother asked me for permission. At some point, she said, "Well, I'm Church of Christ. I'm not Catholic, and I'm not moving up north, and that's just the way it is." So my grandfather became Church of Christ and stayed down south, and that was that. So.
Would you believe I'm Church of Christ?
No, I would not believe that. So.
Central Church of Christ.
Okay.
Are you Church of Christ?
I was raised Church of Christ. Now I'm leaning more non-denominational. It's as you move, it's harder to find churches,
sure,
especially Church of Christ.
Where do you go now?
I go to Benton First Baptist
Did you go to Benton Church of Christ for a while?
No, I did not. I did not. When I got here, when I first got stationed here, some of the Rangers went to that church, and they seemed like a nice place.
Yeah.
And, when I wound up with my kids, they had a really good youth program. So.
Was your mother from Polk County or
no, sir?
Where was she from?
My mother was from Nashville, so my whole family's Nashville. I just got stationed out here.
Stationed as a
park ranger over at G Creek in Owasso State Park. So it's just one of those things. I got here and I was mad at my parents. I was like, "This place was 3 hours away our whole life, and you never took us." And I didn't even know any of this existed. My mom's like, "Well, we didn't know either." It was pre-internet. It was a harder. Yeah. The world was a little bit bigger then, so.
It wasn't bigger, but it seemed bigger, didn't it?
Mm-hmm. It did. It did. It seemed like, I remember knowledge was harder to gain. I remember my mom going to some yard sale or something and found some recent encyclopedia that had everything but an X, and we weren't financially very affluent, and so it was like this big deal because she brought it home, and it was. At my time, it was an exorbitant amount of money. My father was like, you bought what? And she's like, yes, it's only missing the X. She's like, this is great. And all the neighborhood kids can come and do their projects. And it was like a big thing. And now, of course, no one.
Did they update the encyclopedias every year? How was that?
I think it was either every year or every couple of years, I think. I'm not 100% sure.
Encyclopedia Britannica. Mm-hmm. I don't even know what Britannica means, do you?
I don't. I think it just.
And where did they get the information? Because that was massive.
It was.
You could look anything up.
I watched a movie. I can't remember the title of it, but it was about just what it took to make a dictionary, where they wrote down every word and what it meant, and how they had to crowdsource scribes from all over. Yeah. And you think about, we're gonna make a book that describes everything on planet Earth.
In our opinion.
Yes.
You get to thinking, like now it's, I grew up with, as you did, with Webster's Dictionary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And now you go online and it say, well, which definition do you need?
Yeah,
you want what they call it, urban.
The Urban Dictionary.
Urban Dictionary. Mm-hmm. So there's not even a standard. There's not a standard anymore.
No. Things are moving very quickly now and changing.
If me and you're going to have a conversation, don't we need to first agree on the definitions of the words?
We could have two totally different discussions if we weren't. If we weren't.
Just depending on your. That is so bizarre to me.
It is. It's I think it's always been where kids have a little bit different language than their parents, but now I think it's even more so because with the texting and with they've got whole vocabularies that they use that you're not.
Yeah, like LOL.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Funny story about that. One of our rangers had one of our female employees for the summer kept texting him, and at the end she would leave LOL, and he's like, "I think this is inappropriate." He's an older ranger, and I said, "Oh yeah." And she said, "Yeah." He said, "She keeps sending LOL at the end," and I was like, "Okay." And he's like, "I just think lots of love is inappropriate to me." And I was like, "That stands for laugh out loud." Like, oh, well that changes it. He was very concerned with what was going on if he would get in trouble. So it was an interesting.
And that's one small example. Mm-hmm. There's tons more.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the end result is going to be other than, and even when we were growing up, if you looked it up in the encyclopedia, that was the facts. Mm-hmm. Now you look it up online and you say, well, that might be the fact and that may not be the fact.
Yeah, or it could be someone's opinion of the fact or someone's interpretation of the fact. And
was the encyclopedia that way too? and we didn't know it?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was. I think at some point everyone said we're going to generally agree upon this, but even then, I don't think it was ever really agreed upon, because I think that there was always some group or somewhere that was like, "Hey, that might be what's in that book, but that's not what happened here."
I think maybe back then people had more of an obligation to say the facts, more of how how it was than how they thought. Because now it's just bizarre. There's so many variables of everything.
I think information has gotten so much cheaper that there's a real benefit to that, but there's also a cost. When you can crowdsource and you can speak and reach thousands of people and it costs you nothing, then there's not necessarily going to be as large of a weight to ensure that what you're saying means something.
And it's not going to be printed and put everywhere. It's going to just maybe disappear.
I don't know that it ever disappears. That's the other interesting issue. It's but when you put something in print, you're talking about, we're going to put this down and we're going to put our name on it and we're going to write this and this is going to reflect our whole company, and it's an interesting.
It really is, and I don't know where it's all going. It makes people not believe much of anything anymore, because when something loses credibility, then it's lost across the board.
Well, you take shortcuts. So if you want to bring attention to your cause, sometimes you can set up things in order to make those things seem a bigger deal. But when you do that, what you've really done is just killed all of the merit that your cause had in the first place, because now you've gotten attention based on a dishonest.
What do they call that? Clickbait? Just get somebody to, they say, "Oh, you're wearing a blue shirt." Oh, why is he wearing a blue shirt? And then you open it up, and it's nothing but a blue shirt.
No, yeah.
But it made me click on it.
That's, if you see the articles are titled when you look on the internet, like, that's a weird way to phrase that. And then you get in there and you go, okay, I see what they did.
It didn't even happen.
No, it didn't make sense at all. And the reason why that didn't make sense was on purpose, because there's a better way to write that. But if they'd written it clearly, no one would have clicked on it in the first place. So.
And now I'm not going to read the next one.
Right.
So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I think that I listened to a podcast, and one of the things they talked about was when the printing press came out, and how that changed everything, and people were in a panic, and how when the King James Bible came out and it was written in English and people could read it, it wasn't like what we think, where everybody's like, "Oh, we can read the Bible now." There was a huge disturbance in Europe where there were different people saying, "Well, I interpret it this way, and I'm a new God," and there were all these sects and wars and battles, and the Catholic Church was trying. There was a lot. Cages of Munster is a great example of that. In Munster, Germany, there's 3 cages on top of this ancient church, and kind of the story behind that was right as soon as the King James version was written in English, these group of guys is basically like, this guy is Christ come back and we're all supposed to worship him, and they kicked out everyone who didn't agree with them, and then there was a big battle and a siege, and those 3 guys were eventually put in cages above the church and just left there to rot. But there's always going to be with technology a disturbance, and even if that technology is something just like converting to English, it's going to be something that shakes us up, and we're going to have to adapt to it and figure it out.
Human nature generally figures out a way to cope.
In nature in general. I mean, I look at things when I'm in the forest and I think, this took thousands of years to get this way. Hundreds of years if it's been trimmed, if they've come and clear cut it. And yet you can go by here with a machine and knock out all of this in a few days.
With $1 worth of gas.
Hundreds of years. Yeah. $1 worth of gas. And so it amazes me that we have those places where we can go that are still like that. Different places that are protected where you have virgin timber, where you have a place where it was too difficult to get down there, but now as a hiker you can go down and just look at these giant trees and say, this is what it was like.
Are you thinking about the what's that forest up above Percy Maples Forest, or no, what's the name of that?
Is it Joyce Kilmer?
Joyce Kilmer, yeah. Well, I always want to call it Percy Maples. Joyce Kilmer.
I was more thinking of South Cumberland State Park has they actually have in one of their big gulfs, which is another way to say valley. Basically, in one of their big gulfs, they have a giant virgin timber plot just because it was so hard to get down there. But all the other trees have been cut and grown back. But you get down there and there's these just giant.
How old would those trees be?
They've never been cut. They're as old as
So they don't know,
hundreds
really.
of years old. I mean, I'm sure they have a several hundred years old, but because they have a lifespan. But there's not undergrowth like there would be here because of the shade from these giant trees. You go into the woods now and it's all covered in undergrowth, and part of it's because the canopy hasn't drowned out all the light yet. To what we see when we go in the forest now is vastly different than when the first pioneers and first settlers came here saw.
Wonder how much different it would have been that they came over on the Mayflower and walked across the Appalachian. So it would have been. I wouldn't recognize it, right?
No, I don't think you would. Once again, this is all things I'm gathering and learning, but I think that it would be from, like, in this area, every third tree was an American chestnut. And so that's a tree that doesn't even exist anymore because of the blight. So you literally would have, every third tree would have been this giant, straight growing, rot resistant, that dropped nuts down for people to use for bread and flour. It was harder on this area than the Great Depression, and they all died out around the same time. So the forest that you see now would have been vastly different. The passenger pigeons? They had those giant flocks of those things that would take hours and blight out the sun, and those aren't here anymore. So
what happened to them?
They basically were designed to grow in these massive groups, and you could just shoot in the air. We killed them all, but we didn't know we were wiping them out in the 1800s because it was just, we're just seeing these giant flocks, and you're just shooting in the air. And now you've got birds to eat, and then you're seeing, they come by every once in a while. You're not thinking about it. You're not thinking that you just went from 5 flocks to 4 flocks to 3 flocks.
Incrementally.
Incrementally. And they have to have large numbers in order to protect each other and survive. And once those numbers get so far down, they can't.
So the chestnut tree, they used to make bread with it? Well, they crumble it up and make flour?
I mean, like the song Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, the old Christmas song. None of us have had chestnuts because those died out in the 30s.
Are there no more around?
There is an American Chestnut Foundation, and so what happens is the chestnuts will grow a certain height, and then they'll die out. So the stumps are still there, but the blight, whatever. So what they're trying to do is splice the genetics in them, because there are Japanese chestnuts that look different, but they're genetically very similar. And so they're trying to figure out how to splice those close enough to where we'll get maybe a 99% American chestnut that will kind of grow back similar. But
is it possible to walk through the forest and see an original chestnut tree that we haven't seen yet?
That's the hope. The hope is that someday, somewhere, someone is going to find a tree that has escaped that blight. And that's
which is very possible.
It's very possible. I mean, it's a big, lots of forests out there.
I would know it if I saw it.
Well, that's exactly. So maybe it's already been found 100 times and people don't know it. It's interesting because you just know that there are all these wonders out there, and a lot of people aren't aware of what's going on in the world around them, and so they miss it. They walk right past it.
When did you decide? You're a park ranger?
Yes, sir. I'm a state park ranger.
Isn't that really, growing up, everybody wanted to do that, but everybody said you can't do it because it's too hard to get in, it's too hard to get. What made you?
So, not to be disrespectful to those people, but I didn't even know that was a thing. I grew up in inner city Nashville. We didn't camp a lot. My father wasn't aware of how to camp. He loved the outdoors. He was a Vietnam veteran. My grandfather was a World War II veteran. My dad loved the outdoors, but he just didn't know anything about. His version of camping was like a tent with an air conditioner and a TV in it, and that was camping. But my mom had read an article in a newspaper, and she said, "Hey, I read about this place. It's one of Tennessee's best kept secrets. It's called Rock Island State Park. You should go and you should check it out." And when I went there was a ranger there named Joe Moore, and Joe Moore was the manager. He worked a lot of weekends. He's a great example of a leader for his crew, and he was also a big fan of wrestling. Wrestling's big in Bradley County. Wrestling is not big where I was from, but I was our first and still only state champion that we ever had at Laverne High School. And so,
what weight class?
140. And so 1997, it was the last time they had a true state champion in the state of Tennessee. So,
and you're it.
Yes, sir, I am. So, yeah, I didn't know it was going to be the last time. And, so Joe Moore actually watched me win my state championship. He volunteered there. He was one of the announcers there, and he saw me. He said, "I just need to know how to spell your last name." Now, when a guy with a gun belt on and a badge says, "I need to know how to spell it," you assume that you're in trouble.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Oh, I don't know." He said, "You don't know what's going on here, do you?" I was like, "I have no idea because I don't know you at all." And he said, "I watched you win your state championship," and he introduced me to the park and told me some advice on where to go eat. I was very new at camping, and so we became great friends. And after I came back from Iraq, I spent a lot of time camping. I'd gotten home from Iraq. I'd graduated from college, all within like 6 months. I got home from the war, took my last semester of college, and then I was just kind of there with $30,000 in the bank and just kind of didn't know what to do with my life. And so I camped a lot, and I enjoyed that time with Joe, and it kind of helped me heal from the war, just being in that environment. And I would take people on hikes and take people to show them waterfalls, and Joe was like, "You know, that's a career. It's called a park ranger. You ought to look into that." And I was like, "Well, my cousin's not the governor, and there's, I would never." He's like, "If you've got a degree, you got a good shot." And so he put me on the path to working as a seasonal and doing the things you needed to do to get to being a park ranger. And the entire time I was in that desert over in Iraq, I just prayed to be near water. I had surfing magazines, even though I just wanted to be near water. And the first full-time park that they assigned me was over here at Owasso State Park. So it was not one river, but two. And so I was like, that's an answer to prayers right there.
Where is that? Where's your office at?
In Delano at G Creek. It's right up 411.
Right, yep.
It's
I'm
right
very
there.
familiar with it.
Mm-hmm. And that's our head office. The Ocoee River wasn't really a state park until the 80s. And so the Hiwassee was a state park. It had been there since 1972. And so they had rangers, they had all of that. And so when the Ocoee, the rafters started coming along and it started to become popular, TVA and the Forest Service really didn't know what to do with themselves. They were like, these guys, they keep coming, and I don't know. And so the deal was to allow the state parks to take over that and monitor it. So even though, we have this vast, number one whitewater rafting destination in America is over on the Ocoee. Our office is all the way in Delano. We're hoping to rectify that in the near future. We've been talking with TVA about getting an office on Highway 64. We're a little bit closer, a little bit able to help our guests a little better.
How far? It's not very far, though. What, 20-minute drive or something?
It's about 40 minutes from our office.
Oh, yeah, when you go up
all
the
the way
mountain.
down and all the way back around. So and if you're trying to find the Ocoee, you're trying to find outfitters or something, if you're over where we are, you're real lost because you're not on the highway. So we'd like to have a little place right there that's a little closer where we could give some advice on trails to hike and just try to be more of a resource to our community in that area.
Is that what your job is there, is to be a resource?
Yes,
or
sir.
Is it to monitor trash?
Our job is to be a resource to our community and the citizens of Tennessee. That's our job as a park ranger. Our job is to serve. I'm not a perfect man, but I've always been a servant at heart. And so finding this job was a big blessing because it is our job to show you how to have fun with your family. It is our job to make sure that you make the most of your vacation, that you find what you're looking for. And if you get lost, it's our job to find you there too. So our main purpose is to help you reconnect with your cultural heritage as a Tennessean, to protect the values of what areas we have in Tennessee. And that's all state parks. Every state park is unique. It's there for a reason. It has a purpose and a reason why it was chosen to be there. It's not just, this is a pretty place, we should, mark it off as a state park. So people come to our park for adventure. They want to see what this world is about, and so our job is to kind of help inspire them and help instruct them. So,
if there's something that goes wrong on the trails, are y'all the one they call, or would they call the police, or have
the Forest Service handles the trails. We handle the water end of it. We do a lot of rescues in the forest as well because we help augment their forces. Our rangers are good at what they do, so I'm very proud to be a part of that. But mostly they just call 911. 911 will say, hey, we need some rangers. We need the rescue squad. The rescue squad is all volunteer in Polk County. They do a great job as well. They've really upped their training a lot in the past decade. They've gotten very capable. So it's really just a big group effort. So.
It's almost like when you go to work, it's what people do on weekends.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, very much so. And that's one of the things that we really try to encourage our seasonals and our crew is like, this might be Tuesday for you, but someone somewhere has bided their time. They saved up their vacation. They saved up their money. They've grabbed their children, and they are here and they are excited. So make sure, it's almost like you almost want to have like a theme park mentality. Make sure that you wave and you smile and you're as accommodating as possible, because to me, it's a big honor that someone chose out of this whole world. They said, I want to go to Hawaii-Ocoee State Park with my vacation and my time. We work too much in this country. We work more than just about any other country other than maybe Japan. We have less vacation time. Our time is very precious to us. So if someone's going to spend it with us, I think it's our moral obligation to ensure that they're taken care of and that they're, feel well treated and feel safe.
What would they stop by your place and ask for?
Everything. They don't know how to camp. They don't know where to hike. They don't know what the rivers are like. I'd prefer that they stop at our place a little bit more with river questions, because the Ocoee ranges from the upper Ocoee, where they had the 96 Olympics, the middle Ocoee, which is the most popular, to the lower Ocoee, which is basically like just a lazy float. The Hiwassee has a rough section at the upper. The middle is a little more tame, and the bottom is very tame. So when people say, hey, we went tubing down the Hiwassee, it was great, blah, 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 the sections matter, but a lot of people don't understand that. So they'll go all the way to the top just because that's where they heard everybody's going, and then they'll get beat up. And so we want to be there to be a resource to help answer questions and answer things. We want to be the launch pad to adventure for people. That's kind of what we've moved to as a park. And so they ask, where's a good place to mountain bike if you're new at it? Where's a great place to take my son to inspire him to hike? Because I don't want to just wander around somewhere miserable. I want it to be fun. And so we give advice and we collect those good trails and make sure people find what they're looking for there.
Up above Webb's store, you go there a lot, I guess, right?
Yep.
Have you been to, I guess you've been to the swinging bridge that's
yes, sir.
up past there.
Yes, sir. It's a great place to go at night and stargaze, too.
I've never done that at night.
Mm-hmm. Most people haven't, but it's a little extra thing to do sometimes.
That Webb store is such an interesting place, and I love to go there.
It is. There's a lot of history there.
It used to be a post office.
Mm-hmm. It did. There used to be a post office, and across the railroad is the watchman's house. And the watchman, that, from what I gathered, their job was basically when the train came across to make sure the sparks didn't catch the bridge on fire. And
there was a hotel there.
Mm-hmm, there was a hotel there. And so you think back to what life was like for early Tennesseans, and you'd get on this train and you'd go and you'd stop overnight, and everybody'd get out and go to that hotel and inn and eat lunch and swim at the river there and
drop their mail off at the post office.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now if you go up the road, you end up in Greasy Creek.
Mm-hmm.
Come back down to Chilhowie,
mm-hmm.
and there's a park ranger there.
Yes, that's the Forest Service.
Forest Service,
that's their office.
Do you all interact with them a lot?
We do and we don't. It's kind of like your next door neighbor. If he's out mowing lawn, sometimes you're out mowing lawn, you wave at each other. But and sometimes your missions are similar. We really work together with the Ocoee, between us, TVA, and Forest Service. The land was originally Forest Service and TVA, but now state parks have kind of taken over the management of that area. And so everything that we do, we're kind of like renters. So everything we do, we've got to clear through them to make sure it fits with their management plan. Kind of like, if you rent a home, you might be okay with the renters painting the house, but you want to make sure it's a color that you approve of. And so,
in other words, the National Forest, the park rangers sort of have their rules, and y'all are almost like a homeowners association just to manage the waters.
Right.
I guess.
Yeah.
Like an overlay.
Yes. So they've got their rules and their responsibilities, and their boss is the federal government, the President of the United States. Ours is the governor. And so we have a different mission than them. They are the Department of Agriculture. So their big mission, not to overspeak for them, but this is what I've gathered, is they're the Forest Service. They're to grow trees, to make sure that America has a product and a steady product of wood and their needs for lumber. And our job is we're almost like a living museum. Our job is to protect what is valuable to Tennessee and their culture. And so Alvin C. York, World War I hero, that's a state park. State parks are kind of an interesting catch-all for if it's culturally significant, if it's geologically significant, historically significant.
Could you make a state park where it's not a national park? I guess you could.
There are many.
You could say this is a state park, but it's not a national park.
Yes, there are many.
But you happen to be managing a state park that's within a national park.
Yes, sir. It gets very complicated. If you're a park ranger at Hiwassee-Ocoee State Park, you have probably one of the most unique jobs of even being a park ranger is a unique job, but being an Ocoee park ranger is even more unique because not a lot of people become park rangers because they want to drive up and down a highway, 10 miles of highway every day all summer. But it's necessary because you've got this gorge, you've got a cliff, you've got a highway, and then you've got a river. And if there's a wreck, you have hundreds of people with no water on a bus coming up. And so it's integral to have those park rangers there to help sort that traffic out, make the outfitters aware, hey, don't send anybody else up. It's 90 degrees outside. We don't need any more vehicles sitting on the road while we're trying to get this cleared out. We prevent a lot of those accidents by pulling up and checking.
Do the police, the Benton police, would they have jurisdiction inside the park?
No. The park, we would have jurisdiction in the park.
I see, yeah.
So the county does augment us, and we augment them. We help them out as well because you can't drive by something and not help.
Yeah.
So if we're not available, sometimes they'll help. But if they're not available, we'll help them sometimes in other areas as well. So
Now the Whitewater Center, who's in charge of it?
that's the Forest Service.
Forest Service, yeah.
An interesting thing about that place has fiber optic internet from '96.
Is that right?
It does not have water running to it. It actually uses springs, and they filter it. So it doesn't have anything because it's so remote. But they do have fiber optic internet, which is...
It is very remote. But in the summer, when it's really nice outside on weekends, that place is packed.
It is. It is. It's there's not a lot of places you can go and see the amount of big level whitewater where you can just park and walk right up next to it. I mean, you're 10 feet away from some giant rapids and people have...
You get wet from them.
Yeah. So it's definitely, even if you don't like rafting or a little bit afraid of water, you can just go sit there and have a good time. It's a neat little place in the world.
You've got the dream job.
Yes, sir, I do. I'm very thankful for it. It's not what people think. There's people say, I'd love to be a park ranger, just ride around in the woods all day. And well, I would love that job too. That's not what we do. But if you like people and you like to help people, then it's a wonderful, and you like the outdoors, and it's a wonderful job.
And they're there to have a good time, so they're not looking for trouble. They're
99% of the time. 99% of the time. Now, there are hard parts of the job. There are drownings. There are injuries, there are deaths, there are things like that where, we have to respond to those.
Were you up there when Hoss drowned or disappeared? Remember Hoss, the guy that they called him Hoss? He worked for Ocoee Regional Health Corporation. He disappeared up there.
Okay, the one that they haven't found yet?
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yeah, our park rangers are part of that search.
Well, it was terrible. I knew him. He was a nice guy.
I wasn't familiar with the nickname.
Yeah.
But
I don't even know his real name, other than Hoss.
it's that was during a year where we had a lot of, there's, like I said, there's different sections. We had several drownings that year, and so there was like, what is going on? But it's like, well, this one's not related. This one's due to flooding. This one didn't even happen during rafting hours. It was just, sometimes you'll go years and not have any incidents, and then like one summer, it's like, what is going on? So it's
Just a fluke.
it's just a fluke. It just happens.
Let me tell you about Capstar Bank. They're located in Nashville, Hendersonville, Gallatin, Athens, Madisonville, Sweetwater, Etowah, and in Cleveland at 950 25th Street and 3855 North Ocoee Street. I've used them. I like them. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Water is one of those things that it's different than a cliff. A cliff is always dangerous. There's never a time where it's like, well, it's safe now. But water is, even the same river, if they're not generating water, you can walk right across it and, it's safe. And last time I played it was fine. And then you come and it's a little higher. And, oh, well, it's generally okay. It's very easy to underestimate. And if I've learned anything as a Ocoee Ranger, I've learned that. Water is tricky. So
If you can have a leak in a house and never find it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's, water is, and it's a powerful force.
It is. But it's so fun too. And that's kind of the mentality, I think, that we in our world, we were talking about technology earlier. We were discussing that. We spend so much money going to Disney World, and we spend so much money going to theme parks, and it's almost an extension of what life is like. There's lines, there's rules, there's all these things that just kind of herd you along, and then you get into the natural world, and that's not like that at all. It's a choose your own adventure. The only rules I try to tell my guests are like, hey, look, wherever we go, if you get hurt, I got to carry you out of here. So let's just make sure that we don't get hurt.
Yeah.
But other than that, let's have a good time. If you grow up in the city, you learn to look both ways before you cross the street, not walk around in near alleys with a bunch of money in your hand. The woods is sort of the same thing. You learn to look down because there's potential snakes. They're not out there trying to get us. They're
Or
not
a
horrible.
slick root. Don't step on you, twist your ankle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And a mile is way further than you'd like for it to be if you're injured. But what can you learn about yourself, and what can you learn about the peace that you feel from being outdoors? Just kids with ADHD will go out there that have been just a nightmare in a classroom, and all of a sudden they are the most useful, helpful, observant people in the world because all of that sitting, all of that energy that they have is now focused, and they're looking and they're feeling and they're smelling. And I think that's good for all of us. I think that that's where we came from.
Why is that? Why is that it's like you go to these theme parks and they have these made up forests. Why not just go to the forest?
Because it's safe. The plastic trees and the made up things are a little bit safer than the outdoors and the freedom of our choice that we have. I think you get people who appreciate things differently in life. I think the people who find what they're looking for outdoors, I think they find a different thing because it's not inherently dangerous, but you're going to be a little bit more free of
Repercussions. Yeah.
Yes. So you're going to have repercussions less in a plastic forest at a theme park, going down a water slide than you might have if you find a natural water slides in the forest. But the feeling that you get when you find that natural water slide, the feeling that you get when you go on that adventure is something
and you're not sure if you're going to get back in time. There's something about that.
Yeah. It's in us. It's in us to want to see what we're capable of. We need to have a space where there aren't rules. We need to have, one of the things I've read in a book, Richard Louv wrote a book, Last Child in the Woods. And one of the things about that book that I thought struck me was like, we don't have free play. We have playgrounds, but we have slides that are supposed to be used a certain way, and then what do? You fuss at them if they try to climb up the slide or go down the hole wrong. Or
pea gravel on the ground.
You know, what do our kids do the minute they're 5 years old? You put them in soccer. You put them in these rules, and we focus, and we're all working together as a team, but they very rarely have a place where they just have just their imaginations. And we very rarely have a place as adults where we just have our imaginations and we can just listen and use all of our senses. And I think that is the beauty and the magic of the wilderness, is that we built this playground about 15 years ago when I first got there. We spent $30,000 on playground equipment. We put this whole thing in. And at the very end of it, one of our rangers said, we ought to put in a little sandbox. So we corner off this little sandbox and put it in. And that's like the... $30 worth of sand.
Yeah.
$30,000.
Yeah. That's
Cut
where
the
they
ribbon.
play.
The kids all go, a sandbox, and everybody. I was like, man, we could have had a mountain of sand for $30,000. The whole campground could have been sand. But it's that ability to just do what you want to do.
Who was it that said, I went to the forest to find life and found out I had not lived?
I don't know who said that. I'm familiar with that saying. Was it John Muir?
No, it was Walden.
Oh, okay.
Who's that guy
Henry
that went?
David Thoreau.
Thoreau, yeah. Thoreau said that.
Yeah.
Because he went and lived in the forest.
Yes, he did. At Walden's Pond.
A person should read that book once a year.
I think it's a great book. I think it's a wonderful book. From what I hear, I've never been there, but people who go see the pond is like, it's smaller than I thought it would be. Doesn't take much sometimes.
And somebody told me that he actually went and stayed at motels during the period. But still, I think what he was saying was true. And if you ever study Buddhism, they go out into the woods. And I think what you said about something about using all 6 of your senses is somehow therapeutic.
Jesus Christ went into the woods as well.
He did.
When
Garden
he
of
needed.
Gethsemane.
Several times when he was tempted by the devil, he went into the wilderness and thought. So there is something there to that. I think that there are actually theories of like you can learn a lot about God through how He made the world, through nature. There's a lot of people who follow that, and they can learn about God's will and how God made things just by what exists in the dirt and the trees and the animals around us. And I think that there's a lot of wisdom to that, because I think I've felt a lot more at home in the woods than I have in any construct that we've made as people.
There's something about it that we can't put our finger on it, but evidently the people before us knew that because they were wise enough to preserve these forests.
And you think about that. So the Comanche were not pacified until the late 1800s, like the 1870s, 1880s. We had the Civil War. So our country is divided in half up until the 1880s. So you can't even go through this certain amount of land because the Comanche kill everybody. And so when you really think about that, around 1915, so this country was still really wild. We didn't become a superpower until World War I. So we've only been one generation away from not even having our country. There were a lot of people alive in 1915 that remembered you couldn't go through here because everybody would die. And so you think about that, and you think somebody at that time, John Muir was the father of parks, and John Muir was like, we need to protect this, we need to save it. And can you imagine being the president and sitting there and going, look at all this, save what? It's all, look at it. But it's a...
That was radical thinking at the time.
It was. And Roosevelt said, he loved to hunt, he was an adventurer, and he said, I think you're right. I think there should be some things that belong to every member of this country.
It may be that Roosevelt protecting the parks might have been his greatest accomplishment. It's just we just don't know it yet.
I think that, me personally, I have a little bit of a jaded opinion there, but I think so. I think that he had I think that was a huge accomplishment on his part. And to protect land for perpetuity when there was so much land in the beginning. And what that did was that led to states deciding this is particularly special to us, and cities that said, hey, we like this little area. You look at New York City and you look at them when they were building this city, and they said we need to have a
Central
green
Park.
area. Central Park. We need to have somewhere for people to get out and hear birds and smell smells. And
if you was to take Central Park with the prices of real estate now and divide it up into tracts, it'd be worth billions of dollars. But yet they choose not to do that.
Exactly. And there's a lot of wisdom in that. People need that.
Are they? They're not even inching away at it at all. It is what it is.
It is what it is. From what I understand, I mean, it could change tomorrow, but from what I understand, it is what it is, and it was what it was, and it's just, and so.
Now, if you went to a foreign country where they didn't have trees like we have, but they had nature, I think it would do the same thing, don't you? I don't think it's just the national forest. It's a matter of.
Well, yeah. What inspired me to be outdoors was seeing the stars in Iraq for the first time. Growing up in Nashville, you don't see stars. You don't see that much nature. I mean, there's just a lot of light pollution. And so you get out there in that desert in the middle of nowhere, and everything goes down, and you look up and the whole universe is right in front of you. It is something to see.
Is the silence deafening? As they say? I've been places where it was so quiet that it was deafening.
I wish it was that way. I'm on an army base, so it's there's always gear, equipment, something running, and there's always wind in the desert too. So it's not quiet. There's always
what mile per hour is the wind usually?
Think like the beach. Like when you go to the beach, there's just not a lot to obstruct it. So there's always.
If you look into the wind, you'll always get sand in your eye. That kind of speed.
Yeah, they'd have not all the time, but they'd have sandstorms.
That's why they wear those scarves over there.
Yeah, and it's also a lot better to be fully clothed than uncovered in that kind of heat because your sweat doesn't immediately evaporate. That was something I learned. You'd have these little white rings around your elbows where all the salt was all that was left because it was just evaporating so fast. So,
did you see the movie Hidalgo?
I did.
Was that similar to?
It is. It's very similar. It's very similar. That desert stretches. I remember one point just being about halfway through my deployment and just sitting there like, I have to get out of here. And you just look around and you're like, there's nowhere to go for thousands of miles. So you might as well just dig in and just wait because you can't. It's just so much sand. But it's such a different thing. And man, I would wake up and we would sleep on our trucks. We were there for the invasion. And so our trucks became like our homes. And you'd see some giant lizard come out of the sand and go after something and get back in, birds. And you're like, there's so much going on just out here in this sand. So I agree with you. I think anything natural, wherever you're at, is going to bring a certain amount of peace to you. And I would go out and I would run to try to stay fit. And when you would run out in the middle of that desert where the only way to get yourself back is to follow your footprints that were steadily getting blown by the sand, and you see the sand dunes and the sand getting blown up. It's just that's probably the closest I've ever felt to God was.
What possessed you to go to the Army? You're younger than me, right?
Yes, sir. I am, maybe not much. I'm 42 years old. So it wasn't something that I was planning on doing. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He was drafted, and so he did not want me to join the Army. My grandfather's biggest regret was not staying in the Army, so he was a little bit different. But Vietnam, when you grew up in my generation, all of the fathers, a lot of them were Vietnam veterans, and so they didn't have a good opinion of the Army at all because of what they'd been through, being drafted, and that was a tough war. And so for me, it was I had went to dinner with a girlfriend and her father had not served, and his father was a World War II veteran, and he had bought these two reservists dinner. And while they were sitting there talking, I'm sitting there with this beautiful blonde girl and her father, and this man feels like he owes something to these strangers. And I was just like, I can't have a daughter or a son and feel like I owe something to someone, and I have to do my part. And so it was a couple days later that I joined the Army.
Was that the moment?
That was the moment. And my dad was like, you've got a scholarship for wrestling. I was like, I have to go. I have to do it. He's like, this is a crazy idea. I was like, I have to do it. And so.
Was you there 2 years or what?
For the Army? Well, I was in the reserves for 6. And so I was in Iraq. We got activated. We were gone for.
Had the war started?
No, sir.
So you sign up.
I signed up in '99. Clinton was president.
Everything was calm.
So, and I chose to be a truck driver because it sounded fun. My dad did it, and it was a skill that you could use afterwards. Like if you can drive a truck, then it's always something.
You were thinking.
Yeah. Infantry is, I respect the heck out of infantry guys, but there's not a lot of jobs after the Army. If you don't plan on retiring with the Army, like, what do? I'm really good at, like, infantry stuff. Well, there's not. So I chose a truck driver and didn't think about it. And then September 11th happens. You're sitting there going, I'm in college. And I'm like, ooh, this is kind of a big deal. I'm wrestling in college. At the time, I was ranked number 1 in the nation. I'd placed second at NCAA.
What made you so good at wrestling?
There are people who talk a lot, and one of the things that with a great athlete or a good athlete is one is natural talent, and the other is drive. And you can have really good athletes that have a lot of drive, but if they don't have natural talent, they're not going to get. And you can have really good athletes that have natural talent, but if they don't have that drive, they're going to eventually run into somebody who has both. And I think I was blessed to find a sport that I was naturally talented in, and I had a lot of grit and I had a lot of drive. I was self-motivated. I would run before school. I would run after school. I knew that the school that I went to wasn't. We were having to take on Bradley, Father Ryan, you name it. And so my school.
Alan Jones.
Mm-hmm, yeah, my little country school was in the middle of nowhere. And so for me, it was like, I'm not going to be able to be technically better than you, but I can outwork you. And so if I can just outwork you, I can eventually weaponize pace. And so I can just push you until you break. And so that was my whole plan, was just to outwork everybody.
Do you remember that you watched the movie Vision Quest?
Mm-hmm.
I guess.
Yes,
Remember the scene where the cook that he works with comes to watch his match,
mm-hmm.
and he gives that speech.
Yes,
you remember that?
I do.
That's motivated more people
mm-hmm.
than maybe any scene. Maybe even more so than Rocky.
I think for wrestlers, it was great because wrestling's not that big of a sport. I mean, it's not that popular. But, when you have something that's well done like that, it meant a lot to us because it's like, well, someone else gets it. Somebody else is. I think it may be different in Cleveland and Bradley, but if you wrestle for a lot of the schools, one of my friends, Ed, he said, wrestlers were almost like the Navy SEALs. You didn't really understand a lot about them. They were always trying to cut weight. They were always insanely fit, but they were kind of kept to themselves because you didn't fit in the football in the football tribe or the basketball because you weren't. It was some obscure.
It's sort of a solo sport in a sense,
mm-hmm. And it's a combat sport, and that's different too. I've started a high school wrestling team
mm-hmm.
in Polk County, and one of the interesting things for me was that these guys, it's not natural to get in someone's face and say, go, grab a hold of them, you're about to get in a fight, and you don't know them. Mm-hmm. But over the course of a couple months, you'll start to see these guys, they look at the world different, and girls, but they look at the world different. I think there's something in a combat, boxer, wrestler, jiu-jitsu, but when for a sport, your sport is combat, you just look at other men, you look at other things differently. I'm not saying it's a good or a bad thing, but I'm saying that your world is a little different than if you played baseball your whole life.
Maybe more of a survival mentality?
Yeah, well, it puts you into, you can handle yourself. And I think a lot of people go through life and they don't know what they do if they get in a fight. I remember my cousin one time, if anyone ever tried to fight me, I would run away. He's like, I would just run away. I would run. I wouldn't even know what to do. But I think that when you've wrestled or boxed, you're like, okay, I can go into this, and a lot of times it just gives you a confidence, and if you use it correctly, the people that are around you are safer. In law enforcement, wrestlers, you don't have to hurt someone to get them where they need to be. It's a much safer way to handle things, and so.
Well, with wrestling, with football or baseball, you're one of a team, and y'all lost and they won. But when you're wrestling, everybody's sitting there watching these two people, and you're either going to win or get humiliated.
And you're wearing the thinnest outfit in the world.
The thinnest outfit and the little shoes.
And it's very humbling because you're out there, and you're right. I mean, this is.
It's almost like when we was growing up, say uncle. You got to say uncle.
Yeah.
He pinned me.
Yeah. So it's an honest sport. It's a wonderful sport to me.
I think wrestling teaches you to take care of yourself.
It does great at teaching individual responsibility.
Yeah.
But also the value of a team, your individual role in a team. So it gets easy in bigger sports. I mean, if you play right field in baseball, you might never get a hit. And every once in a while you get one, and you might mess it up or whatever. But in general, and it's easy to go, well,
I slipped.
Yeah. But with wrestling, it's like you have to win this place because we need the points for the team.
And it's not 9 innings. You got 3 minutes here.
Well, 6. So it's 6 minutes grand total. So it's 3 2-minute periods. And so, it's like you've got to handle your business. And, I can't wrestle by myself. It's not like golf or something where I could go. I have to have someone there. So if you're not running and you're not training and you're not doing what you need to do, then I can't get the workout I need. So we all have to be disciplined. We all have to take care of ourselves because we need each other to get better at the craft that we've chosen. So it's just a different mentality.
What possessed you with your good job and your leisure time to take on? My understanding is that you coach. You started the wrestling program at Polk County with no pay.
Yes, sir. We Polk County is a wonderful county. I feel like it's ripe for a television show. Not that the people in Polk County would want one, but it is like living in a different world. You've got this mountain that divides you, and I'll come back to wrestling in just a second. But you've got one side all summer long where you have people from all over the world that are coming to get into this kayaking, whitewater rafting, this amazing sport, and they're from all over the world. Literally all over the world people are coming, And then you come to the other side, and you've got farmers, and you've got the heart and soul of America, people who love their country. So it's like, it's so interesting to me because you can go to the grocery store back when we had one, and you could sit there and you could have a guy with, blue ponytails and braids talking to a farmer, and both of them are talking about the rain because one of them's hoping that fills up the creek so he can go creek, and the other one's need it for his crops. But they're both having a conversation because they both want the water. And so where else can you find that? And so you've got these kids, and what strikes me about Polk County is a lot of the kids have grown up there. By the time I was in 7th grade, I think I'd been to either 6 or 7 different schools, and all new friends all the time. These kids grew up together. They'll be 30 years old. Remember that time you peed in kindergarten? Remember.
They remembered everything.
And so they are so well behaved. They're just well-behaved kids. You have a car problem, and this happens at our park all the time. And I'll say, hey, you need to go down here to Jerry's Auto, and Tim will come out there and he'll take a wooden stick and listen to your car, know the tricks. And Bishop's Auto was right up the road, and it's like these people will come out and they'll take care of you, and they'll it's just not something that I was used to growing up in Nashville. They it's just not in them to not pull over and, hey, do you need some help? Hey, what's going on? So all they had when I first got there was football, baseball, and basketball. And so I wanted to start a team, and Mr. German became the principal there, and I was doing a thing in my basement where I was teaching boxing, teaching some jiu-jitsu, just some self-defense stuff to kids. And so if you were getting bullied, you can come over to my house and I'll teach you how to handle yourself. I had a whole gym in my basement, heavy bags, everything. And so one of the people from the school board was like, hey, would you be interested in doing this on a bigger scale if I bought a building? And I said, well, really what I'd like to do is coach a wrestling team. And he said, I think we can make that happen. And it was 2 weeks later, and we had Robbie Combs, who is a teacher there. Robbie Combs called me and said, hey, I'm Robbie. Apparently I'm going to be coaching this wrestling team. And I know nothing about it, but this is what we're going to do. And so this story is really neat if you've got time.
Sure.
It's a lot about being blessed too. So I had these kids, I had these sections of mat, and I was making them come and train. I was bringing it to the high school and roll these mats out. We were running, we were working, and we were supposed to have a donor that was going to donate uniforms and mats, and apparently it fell through. But I'd already gotten a schedule made, and I was like, well, we don't even have mats yet. We've got other teams. What are we going to do? And so I took out a loan, and I went and bought. I went and saw an ad on Craigslist for wrestling mats in Cumberland County, Kentucky. And so I called the guy. The guy's like, I don't have a picture of them because they're rolled up. He's like, but they're good mats. You can compete on them. One side of them, the practice size, has blue paint, but the other side is competitive and, $2,500. And so I didn't have a truck at the time. So I'd get my minivan and hook up a trailer to it and drive all the way to Cumberland County, Kentucky with my minivan and a trailer hitch and load up these mats. Well, when we unrolled them, they were red and white with a P on them.
What are the odds?
What are the odds of that? Our school colors are red,
Yeah,
white, and blue.
in
And
Polk County.
I was like, I'll take it. I'll take it. So we loaded those things up and drove it down. And then I talked to Cleveland about where they get their uniforms from. And they said it was a place in Atlanta. So I called them and said, I need uniforms. I need them fast. Like I said, okay. So we've got mats. We're training. We had 14 kids come out the first year. So we got a full lineup, which everything's going great. We've got our first match as an in-school match, and we don't have uniforms because it's getting delayed. And so I called that guy and I said, hey, man, I've got a match on Thursday. He said, we're going to mail them on Wednesday. He said, they won't be here by Thursday. I'll come get them. So I drove down on Wednesday, picked up the uniforms. So the first day the kids even got to see their uniforms the day they were wearing them. We lost every match but one. But it was our first time, and you're competing against kids who've done it their whole life. Mm-hmm. So,
and they didn't know, they hadn't even been coached at all.
No. I mean, they've been coached by me, but I mean, you're competing with kids from kindergarten.
Yeah.
And so Senator Mike Bell and Dan Howell, Representative Dan Howell and Senator Mike Bell heard about that, and they donated money to help us out. And then a lot of the community donated money. So I wound up paying this loan off really quickly that I didn't expect to be paying on that for years, but I was just like, well, we've got to have it. And so, we had a tremendous season.
You're one of Dan Howe's one of your biggest fans.
Well, I enjoy him very much, and so I'm glad that he thinks highly of me.
He does.
He wanted to go look at a bridge one time, and they washed out a spot, and I got my truck stuck, and I was a little embarrassed in front of him because that thing just went straight into the ground. I was like, well, we're stuck here, and he was very calm about it. And, well, let's go look at the bridge. So he's a very adaptive man in that area. So, but I've enjoyed getting to know him and Mike Bell very much, and it's glad to have someone on your team who you can call that are like, hey, what problems are you having? Mm-hmm. I remember asking him what one of his favorite parts of his job was, and he told me about a guy who'd been in some trouble and gotten his life straightened out, and him helping kind of smooth that guy's way, and the guy has never let him down. He said that was one of the most rewarding parts of his job as a representative. So.
How much time does the wrestling coach take up for you? Is it like a seasonal thing? Or?
It is. It's kind of all year round, though. You try to keep up with your kids all year round. Last year with COVID, I wound up taking the summer off, but normally we were training a few days a week all summer as well. But, it's we train 5 days a week, 2 hours a day, And then you've got tournaments almost every weekend or every few weekends, and you've got matches during the week. It's a lot of hours. It's
what possesses you to do that instead of saying, "Hey, I got it started. Y'all take it from here"?
I like teaching people. I like doing it as a ranger. I like showing you how to rock climb. I like showing people how to paddle. I like empowering people. Like, I really enjoy the idea that I can help you reach your goals as a human. And I think that wrestling is, like we talked about, a great way to learn about individual responsibility. It builds confidence. And so I like to be able to teach that. And so I have a passion for it, and it gave me so much. I grew up with not a lot of income in my home. We weren't very well off financially. And I got to see the nation with what I did with my own two hands and my own work. I got to go to Pennsylvania for nationals in high school. I got to run around all over in college. I got to make something of myself. And
Through wrestling.
Through wrestling. And so to have that feeling to say, I don't know what your childhood was like, but when you grow up and the majority of your things that you have is from Goodwill or hand-me-downs, and everything seems like it's stacked against you. Like the football team that you play from up the road from your little neighborhood, they're always getting beat because they have better coaches or better this or better that or better baseball bats or, their uniforms look better. Everything's always stacked against you. And for just a small amount of time with wrestling, it's like, I've got 6 minutes and there's nothing you can do to buy your way out of this. You can't I'm going to outwork you. And to know that this is like an evener in life, and that, this is fair. It's all fair here. What did you build? What did you make for yourself? That's.
And you're saying, I'm going to beat you because of the work I did.
Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to lose to you because you had better equipment, or because you had, better this or better that, or, your team just had. It's, I think people don't, when you grow up in bad neighborhoods and rougher places, and we, even with our county's wrestling team, I'm so amazed at what we do, because we don't get the athletes. The football stars don't come out for it. You'd think they would, but they don't. We get kids who just don't, kind of been wandering around in the halls, and all of a sudden they're trying this sport out. And so we're making state medalists out of kids who, we had one kid who said that he was told that he was too out of shape for the football team and it would be a waste of time. And so he didn't come out until his junior year, and he weighed 340 pounds. The most you're allowed to weigh is 285. And I said, hey, love to have you. You can come train with us all day, but unless you lose a significant amount of weight. He was our first state medalist his senior year. He lost 55 pounds, competed, and was our first state medalist. And so to have that story for those kids, a lot of our kids are adopted, or they live in, live in single parent. They live, so to be able to tell them the lessons I learned from that is to say, hey, life is what you make of it. You can make excuses all day, or you can get out there and you can work, and that's up to you.
And some people, it is stacked against them.
It is.
I mean, we I hear people say, oh, well, no, it's all in their mind, or it is stacked against some people, and they really, unless somebody helps them,
mm-hmm.
they can't get here from there.
Mm-hmm.
It just can't happen.
Yeah.
Without luck.
Yeah, oh, you're right. I mean, you can't. I think that's what I like about the river, too. You see a lot of these river guys, they come from, kind of misfits, and they find themselves, they find somewhere where they're good at something, and people are happy to see them.
I mean, the guides.
Yeah, the guides.
We call them river rats.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But
they're great guys. I know a bunch of them.
They're amazing, and the skill level that they have.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like,
and they care for the people that are riding with them.
Mm-hmm.
They really care.
They do. But it's like, you imagine coming from a broken home, College wasn't really a good option for you. You didn't make that good a grades in school. A, because part of it is you weren't sleeping that well because your parents were fighting or your stepdad or whatever it is. You're trying to find a meal, you know, and then you find something and you're like, oh, I'm going to get great at this. And so, man, the sacrifice I've seen those guys make to help take care of their guests and the stories that it's inspiring, really. And so, you know, I'm blessed to be in a place where I watch a kid who didn't have a lot going for him be able to go out there and go to war. I remember I had a kid who was in some legal trouble when he got started. Actually, I had to talk to his probation officer and say, he's going to be at wrestling practice every day. I promise. I'll let you know if he's not, but he's going to be here. And that kid made it to state his freshman year. And state tournament in Nashville has 8 mats. It's this giant arena, thousands of people there. And to see that little 112-pound kid wander down and just go to work, you know, he won 1 match. But he was the only kid on our team that won a match that first year at state. And I'm like, to see that kid do that was
it's inspiring.
It's inspiring. I mean, it's so to be able to have a life where you're around that at work, where you're around that in your personal time. You know, it's not me doing it. I'm just hoping to be a part of helping them have those opportunities. You know, I'm not the one who's got to get
You'll be remembered by some of these people forever. And some of them you don't even know that you're doing that for them.
I think that's when I got home from Iraq, I had just a lot going on, and I had a sport bike, and I would drive too fast everywhere, and I had I don't even know the man's name, and he showed me his badge. He said, pull over. And so I said, okay. So I pulled over. It's an old man. And he noticed my army boots I was wearing, noticed my haircut. He said, you military? I said, I just got home from Iraq. He said, I fought in Korea. He said, let's have a seat. And he talked to me about just anger and about things 30, 45 minutes. And he said, you good? And I said, yes, sir. I mean, he just talked to me about things that I didn't even know was an issue. He took a little bit of time out of his day. And it helped me so much in what I was going through to understand that other people had been there too, because I couldn't convey the words. And so if I can help people in that way, it's a blessing.
What are the odds of him stopping you? What are the odds?
But
think about that.
Yeah, staggeringly not good.
About like unrolling the mat and it having a red P on it.
So when we think about that as well, we think about what are the odds of us, if we look around, being able to help people on a day-to-day basis. What influence could we have if we just take a few minutes to say, how's your day-to-day to people? You know, the Boys and Girls Club one time, I showed somebody how to change a tire, and years later that person ran into me and was like, my mom had a flat tire. It was the middle of the night, and I told her I know how to change it. And you showed that. It was like, I didn't even think you guys were paying attention. I thought it was just a reason to get out of the building, you know. Yeah. So, you know, I just think that's
when you signed up to go to the military, you were wanting to serve then.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Did you see any combat there?
Yes and no. We were there for the invasion, so we were there during the shock and awe campaign. IEDs were a threat.
So we were all watching TV where the Patriot missiles are shooting Patriot. You were there.
We were there. And we were following the 4th ID in. So we didn't have direct combat like what you would see.
Modern day combat.
Well, yeah, we weren't infantry. Our job was to shoot at stuff and then drive away. But, you know, you were under a constant threat all the time. IEDs, because we were there in the invasion, sometimes our bases we were on would be mortared and things like that. So,
did you ever have to take cover because there's mortar in it?
Well, it depends on your philosophy. I've learned about this a lot more. So when you first get in country, you're just convinced like every bullet has your name on it. You don't want to die. Well, then there's this long period like, I can't sit there and go through that forever. I'm going to go crazy. So then you just kind of have this devil-may-care attitude. Within the last month or so, you're like, I don't want to die. And so it goes back to that being careful. And so the mortars were so sporadic, and you're like, I could run into one. So you'd basically just like, if they were zoning down, I would, but I'm just going to sit here and just kind of hang out. And so,
you got immune to it, I guess.
yeah,
right?
you did. You just got immune to it.
How long was you there?
We were there 12 months overseas.
You keep saying we. When you talk about the military, you keep saying we.
Well, yes, sir.
Do they drill that in your head?
I don't know. I mean, we operated as a team, but it was a shared experience. I don't know. I guess I've always done that. That's an interesting observation.
When it comes to everything else, it's you, but when you talk about the military, it's we.
Well, we left together as a unit, and we came back together, and I made some of my best friends in the
How
world.
many were in the unit?
Around 100 in our platoon, and then in our company. And so we were mixed between Nashville, which is where I was, and Chattanooga, 212th Transportation Division. And so, you get over there and you learn all these things, and you're learning it all together. You get lost. We're all lost together. So there is a lot of we to it because you're never really alone. You're in a truck with someone all the time. And so,
were you ever scared over there?
You spend a lot of time anticipating. It would be kind of like if you lived at your home and someone banged on your window with a knife and a flashlight, and you're like, oh, that's scary, and then they disappeared, and then they popped up, and then you heard about some neighbor up the road who get killed. So you could never relax because you spend the whole time, like, is that an IED? You're looking at anything you drive by. Is that going to blow us up?
Pins and needles, they call
all
it.
the
You're
time.
on pins
Yeah,
and needles.
all the time, because you don't know. You're going through Baghdad. You're going through large, massive amounts of people. Are we going to get shot at? Are we not? There was just a stress there.
So you drove through Baghdad at sometimes?
Yes, sir.
Like on TV where they're standing on the truck and you're driving through?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we were. Some of the times I was on a 50 caliber machine gun. It was a turret, so you'd stand outside of it and spin around. And so I mostly drove, and my co-pilot would be out there. But I would also switch up. But so yeah, you would.
So you were the guy driving on top of the tank, like on those plastic cars.
Well, I wasn't on a tank. We were in a big truck. But our trucks, we had gunships. Mm-hmm. So we had a 50 caliber for our truck, which is interesting because my father was on a fire base in Vietnam, and one of his jobs was to run a 50 caliber. Mm-hmm. And then my grandfather was a drill sergeant, and there's pictures of him showing people how to use a 50 caliber. I was like, wow, I didn't even know it, but we've all used the same weapon for 3 generations. Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
That is interesting.
They made that weapon really well the first time they made it, apparently, because there hasn't been a lot of change in it. So,
when you were on the base, was it a tented base or were there buildings on the base?
So when we first got there, we were in Camp Victory, and so that was before we went in for the invasion. And so we were on. It was all tents, and you would sleep on the ground. There's 100 people in a 60-man tent. It was super hot. It was miserable. And then they slowly built that up to where they would put air conditioning in, and they put in extra tents, and it was just a thing. But then you would get somewhere, and you would just sleep on your truck a lot of times, or the unit would kind of have a place where, like, well, we're going to start running missions out of Tikrit or somewhere like that. And so you would be in Tikrit, and so it would be just some building that was on a base that had been blown up, and then you made a house. And you would see people be so crafty. They would take water jugs and put them upstairs, and they would redo the plumbing to where you could still take a shower, and it would be hot because they'd been sitting in that desert sun all day. It's just it's an interesting existence.
People are innovative when they have to be, aren't they?
They very much are. They very much are. So,
were you glad when you got back?
I was.
Did you have a weird feeling?
I think what a lot of veterans kind of deal with is that you see people in a world that you can't even relate to. Over there is just a totally different culture, different norms, everything's different. But you see them happy, and you're like, man, it's miserably hot. It seems like, I don't know how many veterans you've talked to, but it seems like every season is like another plague. There's sand fleas, there's sandstorms, there's this, there's that. It's super hot. I remember it was so hot out that when it got cold one night, I was in all of my, it's like a 0-degree sleeping bag the military gives you. It's a very good sleeping bag. You've got Kevlar and all this. And I was like, I bet I can almost see my breath. I'm so cold. And I remember looking at the thermometer, it was like 80 degrees. And I was like, I'm in hell. But you'd have it go from like 130 to 80 or 140 to 80. And so the temperature swing was so much that when it dropped down to 80, you think about it going from, a 50-degree swing, 100 to 50 here would be, or 50 to 0. That's a big swing in the day.
Yeah.
And so, but just the amount of happiness they had there was, they just found a way to smile. And then you get here and everybody's got plenty to eat. Everybody's got, not everybody, but I mean, a vast majority of us have plenty to eat, roof over our head, air conditioning. And I'm not happy. I don't know why. And, you're like, well, I don't know what to tell you because...
So driving through like Baghdad, you could see that these people were genuinely happier than we are.
Oh, they would wave. They would, there were markets. So you could stop at a base and they actually had markets where there was a guy who he could paint incredibly well. And I wish I'd done it. I didn't do it, but it would take him. So if your transportation, you knew you'd eventually circle back around, but you would give him a picture and he would paint that picture like a big full-scale painting, like an artist, and then you'd come back and roll it up, and that would be like, and you'd mail that home. I mean, the skill that they had, I remember we were trying to get a license plate from Iraq. We were just trying to get a license plate, like off a car. And the guy's like, okay, bring tomorrow. So we were there overnight, and next morning the guy shows up with a steering wheel. I was like, that's not what we meant. And he's like, no, you give me money. And I was like, where did you get that steering wheel? So it's really interesting. Like you said, people are ingenuitive. They're going to figure out a way. But those markets and the laughter and
they're not even free like we are, right?
No. You're in a war zone, and they've been in a war zone now for 20-something years.
They were getting passive, as you said. You were somewhat passive through that period.
Yeah. But I mean, we were there in the invasion. We're there first. This is 2003. This is when this all first kicked off, and you're seeing people. You're seeing things that. One of the things that you see that's interesting is no one's going to throw a grown man food. Nobody. It's just not going to happen. So what they taught their kids to do, you'd have a little kid stand out there begging for food. You'd throw them a ration thing. You'd throw them the MRE. Well, the kid would take it and hide it under a rock and then go back out there because that's how he was feeding his family. And I think.
Do those visions ever bother you today?
I was talking to a guy the other day. I talked about how we'd driven through this place that had been bombed, and this guy was kind of digging through the rubble one time, and there was a hand, and he was crying, and just this little hand sticking out, it was a child's hand, and I hadn't even. Well, I forgot all about it, honestly. It was just one of the things that you saw as you were going through. Like, that's crazy. You're 20-something years old. And my daughter, one night, I went in to check on her, and her hand was hanging out of the blanket in just such a way. And I was just like, oh. It just all clicked back. And so I think we have a choice as to how we process things. And I think that you can be haunted by things for a long time, or you can choose to understand that this isn't a perfect world, and that we're not always going to do perfect things, and that we're not always going to be in a perfect situation, and we're going to make mistakes, and that's what grace is for. And so we are going to be in these bad places and realize that these places exist, but we're also going to realize that we have the power to make kind places too. And that's one of the things I try to talk to my wrestlers and just people in general, is that I can't control the world, but I can say this little corner right here is going to be a place where you're safe. This little corner. If you get lost, I'm going to come find you, and I'm going to get real good at it, and I'm going to make sure that I'm strong. And all of our rangers are that way. They'll come find you. They're professional. They're skilled at what they do. In the middle of the night, they'll get on the rivers. They'll do what they need to make sure that you get home. So that's.
You've always been involved in stuff that helped people, hadn't you?
I think my mom wishes I did more normal things. She's like, you've had a gun beside you since you were 18 years old. And you ride motorcycles. I just wish that
you rode your motorcycle
yes,
here. Did you speed coming down 64?
No, I'm not in a hurry anymore. Things change a little bit when you get a age on you. You tend to be.
Why did you choose to ride the motorcycle? Just because it was a nice
70
day?
degrees on December 26th. You don't get that many opportunities for that.
Where do you live up in Polk County? About what area?
I live right behind, like over by Camp Agape, right behind the Sonic in Benton. I'm 2 miles from the Sonic in Benton. So I've got the Chilhowie Mountain is my view from my house. So
on Highway 30, what's that? 319?
No, that's 314.
314.
I'm just off 314. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you go up, take a left back in there.
Yeah, like if my house is actually on Oak Grove Road, so it was actually if you stayed straight, you'd go up the top of the mountain. Mine's on Oak Grove Road, so I'm just.
I built a barn loft for Phil Lee. Up, you go past there, and it's a bread barn on the left.
Okay.
And sometimes I ride bicycles, so sometimes I ride up past that store and take that Oak Grove Road over to Webb's store.
Do you ride street bikes or do you ride like the gravel bikes and stuff?
Road street bikes.
Okay. That's it's so funny. I've run marathons. I tend to run 4 miles a day when I'm not in the middle of like training season. All this was going on. I have no legs for mountain bikes or bicycles. My muscles just aren't the same at all. They're not nearly the same.
I think it's just a different muscle.
It is. It's completely.
It's a little different muscle. I think it, and I don't know the secret either because I'm not that good at it either. But there's some people that just have that ability. And it doesn't matter what they look like.
No, their body type. No,
you can forget that because when you're riding bike, they can have a big belly, and you think, man, how can they go? And you can't catch them.
Yep, you're right.
And they'll be talking to you, and you can't catch your breath.
We've that's another thing that we're blessed with where we live is we have some of the best bicycling, dual sport motorcycling, and motorcycle riding.
Oh yeah.
Anywhere. I mean, I love it up here for that. And that's another thing. I've ridden motorcycles since I was 18, and just the ability to get out, street bike, dual sport, it just didn't go out and ride is just amazing because there's all this beautiful place out here to ride.
You ever go to the Mennonites place?
Yes, sir.
Boy, it's the Needle Eye. The
Needle Eye Bakery, Needle Eye. Yeah, that's what. Yeah. They told me that when they first formed that place, they didn't know what the draw would be, and they said it's like a never-ending hungry animal. You just can't get enough out there. I was like, I know, it's a big deal.
You know, if you go in the dead of winter, they've still got some stuff like honey and some of that stuff that lasts us through. But in the summer, in the peak of the summer, like on a Saturday morning, you can't park.
No. You better plan on getting there early if you want to, if you're planning on getting there in and out, it's not going to happen.
Have you ever driven around that circle?
I have, yes, sir.
Well, that is interesting, isn't it?
It is. I became friends with a man named Floyd, who was a Mennonite there. They used to come use our payphone before the.
Did they ride the wagon?
Yes, sir, they would.
What was his thinking?
They have just they have a way of life, and they basically anything that takes you away from your community is not something they're fans of. So a car is an enclosed thing where it's just not something where you can talk and openly converse, unlike a horse and carriage. It's the electricity, the distractions. They want a simpler way of life, and so he was a very interesting guy. It was nice to sit and talk to him. Talked to him about sports. He had a really interesting opinion on that. He said, there's a saying in the Bible that when we become men, we put childish things away and we work. And so
was he articulate?
Really do sports. He was. He was intelligent. Some are born into that, but you've got a lot of people there in that community that just chose to former dentists and former whatever, and they just said, I'm just done with this.
I could just about sign up for that. I mean, really.
Yeah. They help each other and they work together well. Everybody pulls together.
Do you know that has a basement down under that building?
No.
Yeah, because if you're ever over there where they keep the corn, every now and then you can see a guy coming up from the basement.
Wow.
So they get it out of the fields, bring it into the basement, sort it, and bring it up the stairs.
Huh.
And it's the old cash register.
Yes, it is.
And you know what? If you're ever there and you don't have any money, they say, catch us next time.
Mm-hmm. If you're a little short, yeah. They're interesting people.
They are very, very interesting. Now, the Amish are different than the Mennonites.
Mm-hmm. They are. They're a different sect, kind of like Church of Christ and Baptist.
They say the Mennonites are the liberal Amish.
They are. I mean, obviously we have a little bit more of a little less liberal branch of the Mennonites because they don't have any power. But there are Mennonites, up in Pennsylvania that drive cars and everything. So it's an interesting.
Yeah, it is. And the Amish are more strict than these Mennonites.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So.
Let me tell you about Gobbles Automotive. They're on North Lee Highway, just past Captain D's. They're family owned, they're family operated. My whole family uses them. They've stood the test of time. They will do you a good job. Give them a try. They're no problem.
Yeah, coming from Nashville and getting into this world, I remember first day on the Ocoee riding around with one of my rangers, and he said, our job is to ride up and down this river, and if somebody looks in trouble, then we stop and help them. And I'm looking out, and I'm new at this. They all look like they're in trouble. I'm like, how do you know? We'll figure it out. And he was right. He was right. It's his only job he's ever had. He's been a ranger for 30 years.
30 years.
And so he remembers planting the trees in the campground that were this big, and now they're, towering above us. He's the one who's reminded me to not work so hard, to stop during my lunch break and just go sit somewhere in the woods and just enjoy being a park ranger.
Do you take your lunch?
On the Ocoee you do, because there's nowhere to go. On the Hiwassee, you don't necessarily need to because you're always past the office. But on the Ocoee, you're there. When you leave to work the Ocoee, our rangers, if you ever do the Ocoee, you see them, they're there from the minute that river opens until the minute that river closes, and that's where they are for the day.
Do you go to Mac Point?
No, that's Forest Service. Mm-hmm. Yeah, what's ours is the Olympic section of the Ocoee and all the way down to the takeout.
You carry a gun?
Yes, sir. We're all state officers.
Can you arrest people?
Yes, sir, we can. Mm-hmm.
You carry handcuffs?
Yes, sir. We have the same. We're state officers. We've gotten on details where we.
What do they call it?
Do
Police powers. Police powers or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We've done security for the governor. We have. We're basically, we're not state troopers, but we're kind of like them in the woods. So.
Have you ever had any famous people coming through that you're not supposed to tell who they are or that they're coming? Anything like that?
We have famous people come to the Ocoee all the time. Kevin Hart's been down the Ocoee, the comedian, Kevin Hart. He has.
Did you talk to him?
No, I wasn't there for that day. But it's one of those things. Theo Vaughn, who's a big comedian in Nashville,
Theo,
he was there. Yep, Theo just went down this spring, and so
Theo.
Fall.
How old is he?
42.
About 42, yeah.
So he
was from Los Angeles, and then he moved to Nashville,
he did.
right?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm. You follow him a little bit?
I have a good memory.
Okay.
I remember hearing it, and so he came down.
Yeah, he came down and went down the river as well.
Did you see him there?
I wasn't working that day. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm manager, I spend a lot of time behind a desk, unfortunately. I like manager, but I think if you talk to any manager, they miss being a ranger.
Well, how did you know he was down?
Some of the other rangers had seen him, and then they put it on like Instagram too, with him going down.
So it wasn't like he was trying to be hidden.
No. I mean, they had a camera crew following the whole way and everying.
Is that right?
Yeah, but you just kind of.
Is that for his doing or this?
Yeah, it's for him. Yeah, it's like his crew, so he put it on Instagram, and it benefits us because it's more,
Anybody else famous?
Man, I don't want to forget anybody. There's a lot of famous people go down this river. A lot of country stars, a lot of football players, NFL football players.
And they're probably incognito. I mean, they're not going to advertise it.
They don't want everybody to know. Yeah. But if you do recognize them, then you're kind of like, hey, let's move on. You don't want.
Yeah.
You want. They're here to have a good time. They're here to have an experience.
Well, if you saw them and you were busy, you wouldn't have time to stop unless you planned on them being there.
Yeah. So, but no, it's one of those things that, as far as I'm concerned, everybody going down my river is famous. We want them all to be taken care of and all to be treated well. So, and that's the way the outfitters are too. The outfitters work very well with us because it's one of those things. If someone messes up on the Ocoee, if something is not done well, it affects everybody, because they'll just go, oh, the Ocoee. They don't say such and so outfitters on the Ocoee. And so we have a great partnership, and it's inherent for everyone to work together to try to make sure that everyone has a good quality experience, because that just ups the reputation of the entire area. So,
Angelo, you make me feel like a failure.
No, sir. No, sir. No, sir. I have failed in so many ways and so many times in my life, but
you're one of the most accomplished people I've met.
Well, I've been blessed, and I've been blessed enough to be given forgiveness, and I've been blessed enough to be given opportunities. I got my children when they were 18 months old and 4, and it's an interesting situation, but I've never had biological children, and they were right at the right age I would have liked to have had children at. And I'm so thankful that I get to have these children in my life, and then I get to be a part of their life, and I get to know them, watch them grow up.
Boy, what lucky children, too.
They have a very lucky dad. They're fascinating individuals. They are... do you have children?
Yeah.
What ages?
21 and 20. 21 and 19. Just yesterday, they were 3 and 4.
Exactly.
There's nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do about it. I was aware. The one thing I did is I took advice of people, and I paid attention, and I have backed off of things to make sure that I was there and present. And so I didn't have to look back and go, where did the time go? What, it still does it, but
yeah.
I was there for their field trips. I was there for their, birthday parties and things like that. And I've never regretted that. It's, and that's, I tell anybody, if you've got kids, you make sure that you will never get that time back. But
it just goes like a blink of an eye.
Mm-hmm.
One day you're looking in the back of the car and their feet won't go off the seat, and you look back there the next day and they're taller than you are.
Oh yeah, my son is, he was this little all the time, and now he's 170 pounds and
Golly.
5'8". 5'9", 5'10". I remember about last year when he first hit his big growth spurt, he's like, I'm taller than you. I was like, well, let's not celebrate mediocrity. I'm not very tall, so let's just keep on. When
I stand next to mine, I kind of raise my heels up just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
You don't want them to be taller than you, but you want them to be taller than you.
Yeah.
It's really a weird thing.
Mm-hmm. Well,
you have to get their respect before they're taller than you.
You do. You really do. And then you have to keep it. And that's the thing with my son is, he wrestles as well. He chose to wrestle. And so we enjoy that together. But he's, every once in a while, he still think, like, I got the old man now. I'm like, son, there's levels to this, and you're not quite there yet, But time's on your side. Time is on your side. So.
Do you follow any of the UFC fighters?
I do. I'm really fascinated right now with that Kazmat Chimaev guy, the guy who...
Boy, he is unbelievable, isn't he? It's just he's one of those guys that it's just an awe to watch.
How can you have 4 fights in the UFC and only be hit twice?
Not even really hit.
More victories
Not even really hit.
Yeah, how can you have more victories than punches in it?
And he doesn't really look like a fighter.
No,
like your standard
not built
fighter.
Like your fighter.
Yeah.
No, he's just... But he can, yeah. No, part of what I think is so fascinating with the UFC is wrestlers. Traditionally, you don't have anywhere to go to make money. I mean, you can do the Olympics, but that's
and show me a good wrestler, and I'll show you somebody that will probably win. They can't hardly beat the wrestler.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. That's the base for the UFC. So that's what originally got me very interested. I was like, oh, so this is what you can do with this skill set. You've got to adapt it some, but man, you can really.
I was at UFC 189.
Really?
Yep, and I was at the UFC when Conor McGregor fought Jose Aldo.
Oh man!
8 seconds.
So
and
you're
talk
a big
about,
time follower.
Oh, I'm a big time follower. Yeah, I'm big time. Yeah, I was there, and it was a big. We got there the night before, the whole 9 yards. I placed a bet on everything, and it was 8 seconds. Boy, I hated to see Conor lose.
Yeah.
Against the Russian.
Against yeah. Everybody's gonna make fun of us.
I know.
Like the Eagle. I know.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Khabib
Yeah. Khabib
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah. I wished he would fight him again, but then Conor lost to Dustin Poirier, which I was wanting him to win that one, even though I like Dustin. Then Dustin fights that guy a couple weeks ago and loses bad. You just never know.
And style mix-ups too.
Styles
change.
Boy, that's the truth.
Oliveira might give Khabib a harder run than
I believe he
Poirier,
would. I believe he would.
Because he's a grappler, but you don't know till you know.
He's got hard elbows. That's a big deal. And he's got stamina. Of course, Nick Diaz is my favorite. That was who I went and seen. Let me tell you this story. So I get tickets to UFC 189. He's fighting BJ Penn.
Okay.
And
that's a good one to see.
It was a good one. And so he was going to one of these after parties. So I got tickets to go to it. So me and my wife are there. And it's like 2 in the morning. I said, this is a scam. Let's leave. So we leave. I go out by the back door, come around by the bathroom, and this guy was coming. I said, "Oh, excuse me," and it was Nick Diaz, and his brother Nate was right behind him. I've got pictures, and Tamala said, "Dee, isn't that guy you were wanting to see?" And I said, "Yeah." So I got my phone and I couldn't get it to work. And I said, okay, I got the picture. And he said, nah, man, you didn't take it. Take another one. And I was still just about too nervous.
Yeah.
And I took it, and I've got a picture, one of his arm and one of his face. And that was when Nate wasn't that big. And he was right behind him. And that was really something. He was really friendly. I mean, he stopped, and it was in the back hall he was just coming out of the bathroom.
So what's gotten you so interested in the UFC? What is it about it to you that makes you so...
I tell you what, I was back in 2007 or 8 when the economy went bad. I was at home and everything had just died, just stopped. And so I was watching a UFC fight, and this one guy, I don't even remember who he was because I wasn't big into it then. And he just barely won. He didn't win with any fanfare. He just barely won. And so the announcer came over and said, how did you win? He said, man, I just stayed busy. I just stayed busy. And that struck me. You don't have to win with fanfare. There's power in just keeping on. Just keeping on.
One of my favorite guys that I did not like years ago, but who I listen to all the time now, is Chael Sonnen.
I've always liked him.
I didn't because of all the trash he
mouthing,
talked. Yeah, I didn't like that. Yeah. But now that he's got his own YouTube show, one of the things he talks about why he did it. He's like, look, this is a way to make money. This is this, that, and the other. He goes, and it builds the sport because if everybody's just silent warriors, no one's going to care. This is and it was just really interesting to see the background of. It's just an interesting.
And I don't care what they say. I believe he beat Anderson Silva in that last fight. He had him. I mean, he couldn't even move. Couldn't even move.
Dead to rights.
I just that was one of the most upsetting things I've ever seen in my life, because he had him the whole time.
Mm-hmm. You know, he was the highest paid UFC fighter for years until maybe Conor, and he never won a title. Isn't that interesting?
And the best, and probably the best there was.
Mm-hmm. That's what I like. He's now the Chuck Norris, because if you follow comments, people like, you know, Chael Sonnen, blah, blah. So it's fun to see his fans are now doing the Chuck Norris jokes about Chael Sonnen. So I think that's
fun. You
fun.
think that Kazmat, how do you say his name?
Kazmat Chimaev?
Yeah, Kazmat Chimaev. He may be the guy.
I think he's the real deal. Only time will tell. But what I like about him is that there are people who fight and they get protective. Mm-hmm. They and you're seeing it with Kazmat right now, because he's calling people out, and they're like, "Hey, you haven't been in long enough." That's an excuse.
Yeah.
The only time I'd say that is if I was scared of losing, because I for sure as heck wouldn't let some new guy with 4 fights come in and run his mouth and be like, "Go ahead, Dana. Let's go ahead and get this guy out of here, because I'm tired of people talking about it."
That's right.
But 2 different weight classes. He just wants to fight, and he's honest about it. And that's the one thing I did like about Khabib too, is Khabib was always honest. He was always like, you know, it was a culture thing with him and Conor.
Right.
He didn't understand the selling of the fight. He didn't understand, like, this is not how we work. Yeah. You're disrespecting me. You're disrespecting my family, you know. But he didn't get, like, we're trying to drum this up and make millions of dollars. And he could have cared less. But they interviewed, I think it was Kazmat, and they said, "What do you do with this money? Blah, blah, blah. You've had these fights." He said, "I haven't seen my mom in a few months." He said, "I'm going to go home and see her." And, like, "You're not going to buy a car?" He goes, "What would I do with a car?" He said, I've got a car. I've got, like, that perspective from over there just doesn't click with us. And so it's really interesting to see these guys come from Dagestan. And, I mean, he's Swedish, but he's from Dagestan and moved there. But, I mean, to see that mentality of, like, we're here to fight, and we're here to see who's the best athlete. It's a really interesting.
You know, Conor was good till he got real commercialized. Mm-hmm. That's when they start to lose. I think that's with maybe anything.
Well, what's the saying? It's hard to get up the train when you're getting out of silk sheets. I agree with you. I think that the other thing is.
Well, that's true. Who said that?
I was a heavyweight boxer. I can't remember who said it.
It's hard to get up and train when you're in silk sheets. Mm-hmm. Boy, that's the truth.
It is. It's.
Can we say that today? My business and your business.
I think so. Yeah.
Should we be hungry?
We have to be.
What's the alternative?
You get stagnant, and that's when you start to die. That's when you start to fall backwards. I mean, my biggest nightmare is being called out for a rescue and not being able to complete it because I'm not physically capable, because I'm just too tired, I'm too out of shape.
That would kill you.
That would kill me. That would kill me to say I couldn't save that
person. It'd bother me, it'd kill you.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. And so, but if I start sitting there thinking this is Tuesday, and it gets very easy, if you're not aware, to not check your gear in your truck, to not make sure you have what you need, it gets very easy to just kind of, it's always been this way. So keeping that hunger is very important. Surrounding yourself with people that are hungry also helps.
How do you keep the hunger when you sort of trying to play safe now? See, we're like these UFC fighters that are trying to play safe now. Don't risk it.
So I tell people all the time that's one of the biggest complaints with state jobs. I get paid every month regardless of how much weight I pull on myself. So I can try to help you out with your project, or I can not try to help you out with your project. But guess what? I'm going to get a paycheck at the end of the month either way. Mm-hmm. But the problem is, if I help you with your project and it doesn't go well, that could very well affect my ability to keep my job. So to me, I don't ever want to be that person that doesn't see the amazing responsibility and the gift of that responsibility that I was given to our community. Because right now I manage the Ocoee River, And until I'm not managing it, this is my responsibility. And I don't want to be so short-sighted or arrogant to think I have all the answers. I lean heavily on my team, and I want to hear different perspectives from everyone because there are going to be great ideas. Our Jillian, one of our rangers, I saw an ad on her Facebook when she first hired her. She wanted to rent a building so that she could have a meal for people on Christmas Day that were hungry. And I said, just do it at the park. She goes, are we allowed to do that? I said, yes, just do that. So for 5 years now, every Christmas Day, not Christmas Eve, not day after Christmas, every Christmas
when
day.
When it counts.
Yeah, when it counts, when you're lonely. Because I know what it's like to be divorced and not have your kids with you on that first Christmas and be miserable. When it counts, when you've moved and you don't have any family. I know how lonely it was to be over in Iraq with Christmas. So when you're away from your family, that day matters. And Jillian knew it too. And so every year, she gathers up a bunch of volunteers and they bring food in churches. And, yesterday was a wonderful day of meeting new people and having people who didn't have anywhere else to go come in and sit down and share a meal together. And that's a cool thing. And you saw them changing phone numbers and talking to each other. And so I would have never thought of that idea.
I wouldn't either.
And I thought it was a great idea.
2 days before, a week before, but not the day of.
Yeah.
That's genius.
So I've got my rangers that have been there 30 years. They know every pipe, every little thing. And so, hey, what do we need to do here? There's not a thing that I do that I don't try to talk to those guys about and say, what do you think? And the outfitters too. I don't want to sit there and not want to do something because it's more effort on my part and then miss an opportunity to benefit an entire community.
But when we try to look for a drive, mm-hmm. and we can't think of one, is a made-up one just as well, just as long as you have a purpose?
I think it's important to have goals. I think that's important. But I think that if you're struggling, because one of the things that it does get easy to do is say, hey, someone's got an idea and we've already tried that idea 15 years ago. Things might not be the same now as they were 15 years ago. It does take a lot of energy. I think you find other hungry people, like I said. If you surround yourself with hungry people and you talk to people who, if your business is construction and you only do what you do, you might fall behind because you're not seeing newer ways to do things. You're not seeing innovation. If you've got friends that are also in construction, you're in competition, but you're also the only people who understand what you're going through.
Maybe competition is a...
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what we're saying here is motivation is important.
Motivation.
No matter what it is.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that if you're motivated for the wrong reasons, you can lose sight of what your goal is. I get people all the time who want to do things with the parks. And what about this? What about that? And I'm like, that's not the mission of the parks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we could be motivated, we could be moving, we could do something. But if it dilutes our purpose, then it might not be.
Well, then that's going against that. That's going against that purpose.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Oh, maybe this is it. Find the purpose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I remember this one rich guy that I used to know. He's dead now. And I asked him, I said, you ever get burned out? And he said, oh, yeah. And I said, what do you do about it? And he said, oh, it'll be gone in a few days. I said, well, how do you stay motivated? He said, look at your kids. And I said, what do you mean? He said, just look at your kids. I guess you can find motivation in that.
Mm-hmm. What do you guys have a mission statement with your company?
We just try to survive.
Okay, so...
Maybe that's it.
Well, so our park has a mission statement because government things are all about mission statement. But our park has an individual. But I have a staff mission statement. And so one of the things we do at our staff meetings is we meet. And one of the things we just started this year was like, what is y'all's mission for this year? Not mine, but what is your mission for this year? What is it that's valuable to you? And so being able to hear from my coworkers and the people who work under me, what's valuable to them and what's challenging to them has been really great to help me keep my purpose and define what my mission is. one of the things I did was there's a deck of cards, and if you ever want it, I'll loan it to you. But it's all these different words, and you say you pick out 7 that really mean something to you. And one of the things that I didn't know, I learned a lot. One of my employees wants to have goals and wants to have clearly defined goals in order for them to do things. Another employee can't stand that kind of thing because they feel cornered, they feel boxed in. A park ranger job is a weird job anyways, because it's like, how do you rate how many people you said hi to today?
Right.
How do you, what do you do with that? And so you need to say hi to 37 people. What am I supposed to have, a clicker? How do I, So some people like different things. One really likes titles. They like to say, you're in charge of this. This is your title. This is what you need to do. So when you find that out, then it makes it really easy to plan their year out as far as their performance plans and their individual plans to say, hey, this is this and this is that. And when we all get together and talk about the problems that we've had and what's the solution for this problem, because I don't, people come up with great ideas, but now we have a mission statement, what we want, what our goals are for this year, what we want to improve on. And it's not something that I made, it's something that we all made. So that keeps me motivated because I know that my entire team is pushing for this. And so I want to do my part for my whole team.
And you can also look and say, well, I've got this project, I need this done. This matches this person's goal and purpose. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can mesh the purposes.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I agree with you 100%. I think you can mesh those to where everybody wins. Mm-hmm. But I also think if you are an owner of a company or a manager like me and you have people who come to work every day, their lives are affected by your decisions. Their ability to be happy, their contentment, and it's not just them, it's their wives and their children, because if they're not happy and they're frustrated at work, then they're not able to relax at home. And so to me, if I have to stay motivated to try to stay able to make sure that they have a place that they're proud of and that they are getting what they need to out of their careers. I can't really take days off. And there have been days when I've just been struggling. Just sometimes it happens. It happens to everybody. And, that's when if you have a really good relationship with your employees, say, hey, man, I am struggling. I'm having a rough week. So I need to take a little more time to ride around in the park and really refresh my batteries. I can't, can you cover this and this for me? It makes a huge
How many people are under you?
I have 6 rangers. I have a secretary, a clerk, and I will, once I get to hire them, have 2 full-time maintenance people. So basically 9 grown adults with families and children.
And their own issues.
Mm-hmm. Their own issues in their own world. And so, you've got your own issues in your own world, but you've got to make sure that environment at work, that's your responsibility. That's yours. And you've got to take ownership of that this is, if this isn't stable, if this isn't fair, if people are being treated differently, that's on me because I'm the boss. And I need to make sure that I'm addressing that and having a good open door policy with them to say, hey, does this seem fair to you? How does this, let's sit down and talk about it. I think really helps a lot to where they understand we're all on the same team. I just have different responsibilities.
You're an incredible person.
I'm really not.
You make me feel stupid.
No, sir.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you for your time.